First of all, we're really gonna have to talk next time about not coordinating our hair and outfits and beards here.
Hey, you're lucky I didn't wear plaid today, because normally that's what I would wear.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been just bad. We got the same hair, the same beard, the same Sauconys.
Same sneakers. I know.
Striped
socks.
I got sandwich meats.
Sandwich. Okay. Yeah. And I went with orange and blue because it's a Syracuse game day.
It's simple. I have a case. It's filled with hundreds of postcards. On the back of each postcard, I've written topics. We pull these cards at random, and then we talk. So this first card is career. And if you weren't playing guitar in a band, what do you think you would be doing right now?
Wow. Hopefully I'd be skiing.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Are you good?
I'm okay. I'm comfortable skiing just about anything.
Yeah.
And I work as a ski patroller. So it's kind of my fallback thing. My hope is that, someday it would just be the thing that I do all the time. I want to retire gracefully into just being one of those old ski patrollers on the mountain that's just sort of, skiing gracefully down the mountain and can tell people which way to go.
What's your mountain?
So I do it at Snow Ridge in Turin, New York, which is where we host moe.down.
Right.
And the interesting thing about it is it has nothing to do with the fact that we do moe.down there. I sent them sort of, for all intents and purposes, an anonymous email, along with the other emails I had sent out to a bunch of other ski areas in the Adirondacks, just saying, hey, I'm interested in patrolling. And they were one of the first places that got back in touch with me and said, sure, come ski with us and let's see how it goes. Went really well. And they said, well, come back tomorrow and, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about what the program is. And so one thing led to another, and they took me into the program, and I started training with them. And it wasn't until several weeks in, and it came up, so what do you do? Oh, I'm a musician. Oh, really? That's awesome. We started talking about it. And I didn't want to divulge that I was the guitar player in the band Moe, because I didn't know how the locals felt about the event there. I was just being careful about that. I didn't want it to taint their decision.
Their decision on whether or not to accept you into the program.
That's right. Yeah.
How are your medical skills?
They're okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, not as good as my skiing skills, but it's something you have to stay on top of for sure.
It totally is. What is it? It's ICE? What is it? There's like some acronyms you have to know.
Oh, RICE.
RICE, that's it.
Yeah.
What is RICE?
RICE is it's rest, ice, compression, and elevation.
There you go.
Right. And I know this because my fiance just broke her leg at A Basin this past weekend.
Oh, for real?
For real.
How bad?
It's pretty bad. It was her the base of her fibula. She just broke, and we had sort of split up, and so I went to go ski a little more difficult terrain. She's an intermediate skier.
Yeah.
And then we were supposed to meet back up, and I was going up on the chair, and then I saw some patrollers tending to somebody, and I recognized that it was my fiance. I saw her jacket, and I was just like, oh shit.
Okay, well this card is cooking. So you're kind of a healthy guy here. So do you cook for yourself? Are you a good cook?
I do. I cook all the time. I'm the primary cooker or chef in my family. So.
What's your best meal?
Oh, wow.
What do you know how to make the best?
Wow, that's a good question. One of my go-tos is pasta fazool. It's just a beans and it's like a white bean and pasta dish. Really simple, with a clear broth for the most part, and just a few simple vegetables in it. And it's the easiest thing to make, but you can screw it up if you try and do too much to it. And just to make that dish and make it well, it's so satisfying, it's so hearty, and you can eat it year round, but it's really good as a 3-season dish, especially being in the Northeast. And I learned the nuts and bolts of it from Vinny, from our drummer. Oh yeah.
Is he a good chef?
He's good. Yeah. Well, especially when it comes to Italian food.
Do you eat meat?
I do now.
You do now? I thought you weren't.
Yeah, no,
I
I became a vegetarian when I was 13, and then crossed over to vegan, and I went all in for like 20 years. But a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I came back and saw the light, and now I'm all in. I eat everything, and it's great.
Hold on, let's go back to this. You saw the light. What was seeing the light? What was that moment?
I just, Honestly, I had a lot going on in my life personally. You know, part of it had to do with my dad passing away, and you know, being a middle-aged man, sort of standing between my father and my son. You know, it puts life in perspective. I mean, nothing gives you a wake-up call like having your father pass away. It's a real coming of age. You know, it's a rite of passage that we all go through at some point.
When did your father pass away?
It's been about 4.5 years.
4.5 years.
Yeah. And so like I said, it just puts things in perspective. And at that time, I just realized that life was too short.
To not eat steak.
Well, yeah, you know, or just not to, you know, and at that point, I really sort of embraced, you know, kind of that notion of doing everything in moderation and just being a little bit easier on myself, not being so strict about everything. You know, I didn't drink coffee, I didn't drink alcohol, I was a vegan, I was just like, I had all these rules about how I wanted to be so good about everything, but life was too short for that. I just wanted to enjoy things a little bit more, and you know what, life has been fantastic ever since.
Well, what new pleasures have you taken up since you sort of grabbed life by the horns?
Coffee, alcohol, you know, food, you know, just like I said, it's just, you know, and it's not like to the point of, you know, excess, but just being more relaxed and not having standards, but just enjoying things in moderation.
All things in moderation, including moderation.
That's right.
You can't go wrong.
That's right.
So you didn't drink at all up until, you know, 4.5 years ago?
Well, I mean, I certainly did in college. I was a pro.
Yeah.
And you know, but then once I decided I was having kids, started raising a family, you know, then I became very serious about my health and my kids and whatever. And one thing led to another, and I had slowly just started giving up these things one by one. It was just supposed to be temporary. When, you know, my ex was pregnant and she was going through this process, it was just sort of a notion of solidarity.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, well, you can't drink, I'm not going to drink. Oh, you're not drinking coffee, I won't drink coffee. You know, I'm going to exercise during this time. And then, you know, she was nursing. It was like, okay, well, we're still not drinking, I still won't drink. And then next thing you know, like a year and a half goes by, 2 years go by, and you're not drinking. And it's like, it actually feels pretty good.
That whole waking up in the morning.
Getting to wake up at 8 in the morning, especially when you're on tour. You know, not waking up hungover, but it's like you wake up at 8 in the morning and you're in Atlanta, for example. It's like, I'm going to go out and do stuff. I'm going to go out for a run and get stuff done, come back, and it's 10 in the morning. It's like, I've already run 5 miles and like checked all my email and like gotten a bunch done, and you still have the rest of the day left, and you've already done a bunch of stuff. I've already seen half the city. And
being productive is not overrated.
No, it's a good thing. My kids are teenagers now. I have a sophomore and a senior.
Oh my
God. You know, part of that process is, you know, training them to become adults and take care of themselves. So, you know, I'm allowed to eat and exercise and play my guitar and do a little bit more of my own stuff because they're old enough to do their own laundry and fix their own breakfast and be, you know, contributing members of our household at this point.
You know, Vinny's kids are teenagers too, I think, right?
Yep.
Do they know each other? Do you guys live close enough that maybe they're friends?
All the kids know each other because they've spent so much time. They all grew up together at moe.down, New Year's, all these different events, and they've all been friends since they were little kids. It's funny, Rob and I were just talking about this the other day, and I mentioned something about, so my son's a senior now, and so he's already applied to schools, and we've done some college trips at this point, and I mentioned a school by name, and he said, oh, that's one of Eddie's schools too. And his son's a junior, but he said, wouldn't it be funny if both our boys wound up at the same school? I could totally see that.
We're talking about your kids, but this card is childhood. Let's talk about you as a kid. Mm-hmm. What was Child Al like?
I was a difficult kid.
Really?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I was a troublemaker. It just in that, I mean, I wasn't picking on other kids, but I mean, I was always
just getting into shit.
Yeah. That either at home or in school, and was always, you know, cracking jokes in class, that kind of a thing, or I did well in school up to the point where they started giving us homework, and I just never did it, and which was part of the problem. So again, like I was a problem student, so I, you know, sort of consistently had detention because I wasn't doing my homework, and I would do well on my tests because I would learn the material, but I couldn't. I was too distracted. I wanted to do all this other stuff. You know, I was playing sports. You know, my best friend and I, aside from, like, we started a band when we were 13. That's when I started playing guitar. But we were also really into BMX bikes. So it was like another gearhead thing that we started when we were like 13. We were riding our BMX bikes all the time. And then we got into skiing. So like that was our winter sport. Then we went back to BMX. And, you know, it's like just constantly out doing shit all of the time. And so there was that, you know, and then at some point I started doing drugs. And, you know, it happens. You know, you have, you know, sort of overactive kids that are a little bit bored. And, you know, they, I guess, you know, probably tried to keep me busy by putting me in other classes or giving me other activities to do, but drugs were way more fun. I started smoking weed when everybody else did in, you know, middle school, and, you know, and then it kind of went from there, and then I discovered the Grateful Dead, and, you know, and one thing led to another, and I just decided I liked that a whole lot more than doing anything else. You know, and I read a lot of books back then too, but, you know, the books were like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, or, you know, stuff that Ken Kesey was writing, you know, it was all of that stuff, because I was just, you know, I just fell in love with the whole thing. Let me put it to you this way. I did some really stupid things at a young age, and I'm lucky to be here today. And I've written songs about some of them at this point, you know. Like, you know, getting arrested in Mexico on my 21st birthday, for example. Or, you know, there's just these things I look back on, and I think about the, you know, just how galvanized you sort of feel as a teenage boy, and the things you think you can get away with. And it's, you know, I'm just grateful that I'm here today and that I'm healthy. And, you know, that was all in my past. And I had like so many great experiences, you know, traveling and seeing the Grateful Dead and, you know, other bands. You know, somebody just asked me this the other day. I think it was 1982 in Syracuse.
82, so is it the Brent Midland years?
Oh, yeah. The Brent years were my years.
Those are my favorite anyway.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, his playing, especially on the B3, he's such a great organ player. And he had a lot of good songs, and I thought he added so much character to that band. He was my favorite keyboard player in that band for sure.
You know, I mean, your kids are at an age also when they can go start seeing live bands. What are they into?
Oh, it's so much random music. It's ridiculous. You know, my daughter tends to like more pop music. You know, things like Adele. She likes singers and songs. You know, that kind of thing. You know, she went to go see, was it Bruno Mars at one point, and Train, and like those things. She likes songs and singers, and whereas my son was way into rap music for a long time, but he likes kind of obscure rap music more than, you know, the well-known names, because, you know, it starts with that, you know, and he'll start with something like Jay-Z or Eminem or whatever and has to listen to their entire catalog, but then he starts to listen to the people that influence them, but then he wants to know who the producer is and what have they done. And so he gets into these like really obscure.
In some ways, the kids today have it better than we did because they can go down that wormhole on Wikipedia, and they're like, okay, well, who influenced this guy, and who was the producer on this album? Well, I like this. Where I don't know how we got that information.
Yeah, I mean, I had to go to record stores and like read liner notes. I mean, that
maybe we had it better then.
Yeah, I don't know, and you know, and then ask the guy in the record store. You know, I mean, it's like you had to kind of do it the old-fashioned way, or it was all word of mouth sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think I take back what I said. I think it was a more human experience then.
Right.